Hello there, welcome back everyone. My name's Ketchup, joined by Flea. This is week 4 of the Quake Pro League Season 2, and I'd like to welcome everyone back to a good day of action. I can see Maxter having a pumpkin head on Ranger, I really like that. Maxter versus ZenAku is our next matchup, and I'm not really sure what to make of this one, to be honest, Flea.
I mean, historically speaking, this is the first time that both of these players are going up against each other in the Quake Pro League, so there's very little precedent to base ourselves on. Of course, Maxter not too long ago only made his way into the Quake Pro League back in the Stage 4 finals. ZenAku has been around a little bit longer, but both players haven't managed to go up against each other just yet. So this is indeed a big unknown. Two solid players going up against each other, so just like you, I really don't know how to call this one.
ZenAku has absolutely gotten stronger the more we see him in Quake Pro League, and we've talked about this a bunch in the past, but the first stage he kind of made his debut, there was definitely an area of him needing to find his feet, get familiar with the process, learn the competition, get back into that competitive drive, I guess. The Pro League is different to anything else you would have ever played, right? So now he's starting to reach a more consistent level that people know he can play at. He's starting to do a lot better on a map-by-map basis. Maxter, I think, has kind of hit that situation, but he's got there a little bit quicker because he's already playing incredibly well.
Yeah, and so far Maxter has beaten Effortless, but then he lost to his former teammate Nosfa, who no longer is a member of the Blackhawks clan, but still, Maxter looking sharp, and as we saw, the guy clearly has got skills, managed to upgrade his hardware setup a bit, and it's clearly working out very nicely for him. Both really strong players, heavy hitters is the way that I would characterize them. Still pretty new, they don't have the same level of experience that a lot of the other veterans have, but of course, as you said, the Quake Pro League, what better way to improve than weekly games against the best in the world?
Honestly, in a competitive setting, I almost forgot that there are still players out there that don't have top-of-the-range equipment and have to make do with what they've got, and the fact that Maxter was able to do that is... anyone, and I'm sure it's all of us at some point, anyone that's ever had a machine that can't 100% run what you play, it's being able to play at that level is insanely impressive. I didn't think it could be done a lot of the time, especially a game like this, but I'm glad that he's a little bit better with it equipment now. We have the picks and bans, so we can find out whether we're going to see some of those new maps or not. Awoken, Molten, and Blood Covenant, Tower of Koth, and Deep Embrace, both removed. I gotta say, get used to that. I think that when we're early on, unless you are a player that has been absolutely studying hard some of these new maps and you kind of have it as like an ace up your sleeve, I do think a lot of these players are probably not going to want to play on the new maps at the moment while people are still learning it. Because in Season 2, every map counts. Every map has its own prizing. Awoken, Molten Falls, and then the Blood Covenant. We can see Ranger and Sorlag. Molten Falls, Death Knight. We get to see a little bit of new and improved Death Knight versus the Strog, and then Blood Covenant, Athena, and Visor.
Looking forward to that. Death Knight got a bit of a buff in the most recent patch. Previously, he was probably the lowest tier champion in the entirety of any possible pick. People basically never played him unless it was a best of 7, and it was the last possible champion that you had to choose from, Other than that, we never really saw him make an appearance, but now there's been a bit of a change in the fact that his flames now simply work the same way as Sorlag's acid does. So not only do they do initial damage when they contact, but they also just hurt you and set you on fire when the opponent simply walks through it. So clearly, that can greatly amplify their potential for area denial and to do that damage over time. And I think that we can really see him shine on some of the smaller maps now.
Yeah, it is those smaller maps that I strongly think we might start seeing Death Knight picked a bit more because, when you look at Death Knight, you look at his utility, everything about him is geared towards damage. It is the gauntlet setting them on fire for bonus damage. It is the flame strike damage. It is the damage over time. That's what he does. And on those tiny maps, if he's got a rocket and a dream and an ability, I think that might sometimes be all he needs, depending on the matchup. And I'm really, really curious to see how far he can take it. Looks like we're loading into Awoken now, though. If I were to put you on the spot, Flea, and ask a prediction with the, I've got to say, lack of prior information we have on these two players going head-to-head, who do you think has the edge here? I'm going to start and think 2-1 ZenAku. I believe.
I would say the same thing. Watching Maxter play against Nosfa last week was it was inconsistent, right? There was potential, but he just didn't live up to it the way he did towards the beginning of the season. So there's a bit of an up and down going on. And I do think that ZenAku has been looking good. He's been practicing a lot, streaming a ton. I've seen him play so many top tier players like Rafa in the past few weeks alone. So I think that ZenAku is probably going to be taking this one 2-1 as well. I don't think it's going to be a 3-0. I'm slightly favoring ZenAku here as well.
Well, looks like we're currently in our warm-up phase, so no doubt we'll be loading into this map very, very soon indeed. Both these players, they've got their own little fan bases, don't they? Content creation and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
ZenAku, the have fun, mate. What a nice guy.
Chat, make some noise. I know there's a lot of ZenAku fans, a lot of Maxter fans. Let me hear it. Who do you think, or who do you want to take this series as we are jumping into our first map? ZenAku is running the sword like he's got that big beefy stack, whereas Maxter got the burst damage with the orb and also that added mobility.
I think making noise in chat, it's either going to be emote spam or like lots of caps or something. Hopefully there's no kind of auto mod that might time people out for that, but you know what, for the greater good. Oh, this is the initial moment. And it looks like Maxter pulls the trigger. Actually, both players pulled the trigger on their ability, so that was a expensive early sequence, but as ZenAku was in position for this heavy, and Maxter was not really able to stop the Sword Light from taking it, especially after that missed rail. That's going to be a little bit tricky. But Maxter, still trying to make his presence known. Needs to restack, but he can't allow ZenAku to simply bully his way around these corners. Opening rocket. Information, but not a lot of damage. ZenAku swaps to the rail last minute. That was a bit of a scary sequence, to be honest. That definitely could have gone either way.
I like Maxter's decision right there. I think he went for a bit of a horizontal rocket jump to get himself onto that item faster, but oh, he's not gonna get out of this one fast enough. ZenAku, 3 rails in a row, and that's gonna be all she wrote. Late on the reaction there. Spit won't quite connect, so no damage over time. Mega will be the first item to spawn, and it's actually Maxter who's got the better positioning on it. He's missing out on stack, but position-wise, he has got this locked down. Nice bit of LG. Rail coming up as well, and another one. ZenAku, 75% railgun for the time being. Man, it's unstoppable with that weapon. Maxter should not have been there. Definitely didn't do enough damage to just rush in with that starting weapon. Hoping for a miracle, going for it again, and once more, he will fall short. Very close though, but gotta be careful with these hyper-aggressive refrags. Or at least attempts.
And I mean as well, because ZenAku, his timing on these items has been really good. Maxter is pushing on to try and, get these refrags or whatever it might be. But ZenAku is not only finishing him off with a tiny bit of life left, but he's able to then pick up an item and immediately get that stack advantage to punish Maxter again fresh off spawn. So it kind of goes from bad to worse every single time he concedes a frag so far. 6-0. That's quite a lot in a short space of time, even for Awoken.
Yeah. Something that we've been talking about a fair bit. We saw it in previous series as well. Sparty kind of fell victim to that as well, just pushing in too much, too aggressively. And ZenAku, the LG, is on point, forcing Maxter off the item. He's got a nice little rotation going on for himself. 15 seconds between the item. That's perfect. That's beautiful. He can just line both of them up, and Maxter, yeah. Maxter caught by surprise, that LG to the face that is going to kill any momentum you might have, freeze you in place. Nice rockets though. This is an opportunity for Maxter. One more bullet will do it. ZenAku, madman, still going for the peek and the jump right there. Knowing very well that one bullet would have spelled disaster.
And now, able to stack up just a little bit. That missed rail, that's not good for Maxter. If that one rail hit its mark, the teleport, the orb, that would have been a push into probably a frag, but always goes to show you have to go into a plan B or whatever it might be from missing one single shot. How punishing Quake can be at this level of play is always kind of eye-opening, I think, when you see it put into practice like this. However, heavy up, and Maxter absolutely in a position for it. So now, the shift of power. ZenAku, the player that has to be a little bit more patient here, as Maxter patrols the map with plenty of stack, and the fact that his orb is just about to come back. And now that's ready to rock. Even if ZenAku's able to get his acid spit, it's going to be kind of tricky for him. Soak up the light, get in and out. So I didn't take the tri-bolt. There's no point giving your position away if you don't need to.
And I think that by now, ZenAku has also just caught on how maxter is approaching this. By going for these aggressive refrags, ZenAku knows. He's going to be prepared for that. He knows exactly that when he gets a kill in that situation, maxter is going to come right back at him trying to do more damage. And it's only going to make it harder for the player from Argentina to successfully make something like that happen. So maxter probably has to find another way around that. Landing a few rails here would be a good start. Again, going for the LG will pay off this time, as that mecha robot in a pink tutu will drop down for the first time on this map.
I think both of these champions are just a little bit interesting, aren't they? You've got the robot with the tutu, you've got the spooky ranger, he's got the pumpkin on his head. The year's gone so fast, I forget it's Halloween soon.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to be able to really do anything, but, you know, never mind. And now the push from ZenAku. Lovely stack. Missing these rails, though, that maxter is returning. And, uh-oh. Yeah, maxter able to pick up a little bit of the light. That's good to stop the bleeding.
I'm surprised he still went for the orb. Thought he was just going to keep it as a juke. Oh, ZenAku turning around the moment too soon. If ZenAku had persisted and pushed through, he probably would have gotten that frag. Given how low maxter was. Click. Out of ammo. Has to loop back around, pick himself up. A few more of the slugs for the railgun. But in doing so, he's just bleeding time. Every moment that he's not pressuring his opponent right now is working out in ZenAku's favor. 6 frags in 4 minutes. Entirely doable, especially on a smaller map like Awoken, but so difficult to push off, or pull off rather, especially when you're at a stack disadvantage like this.
Yeah, maxter's, well, I was going to say before he hit 2 rails, he's not having the most consistent of rail performances, which is always going to hurt you against those larger champs. It's how you kind of, I guess, really recover from that. Either start hitting those shots or go for something else. In this case, a beautiful little push for the super shotgun to finish. I would say a good spawn to catch some free damage, but ZenAku is with the stack, and maxter certainly isn't.
He should have left that engagement for what it was. Half a second after exchanging damage right there. Should have known that that was not going to go his way. If he would have gone for the railgun maybe off the start, sure, but that heavy machine gun, you know how stacked Sword is from the start. You know that ZenAku is going to be able to match the damage that you're doing. maxter sticking around a bit too long right there, and because he took so much damage, he actually allowed ZenAku to get full control of both of the items again. And now he's struggling to make a move. He has to get out of this room. Nice little rail, though. That'll buy him some time. Oh, he needed that one. He needed that one.
Absolutely. And at least maxter was able to survive in that situation. He'd just soaked up everything in that side of the map, and then he was forced to retreat. And then you have to go back into the room that you already know you've just taken everything. That can't be a particularly comforting feeling. But now, on that note, things have actually finally come back and returned for him. The danger is that this is all taking a long time, isn't it?
Yep.
And now as we enter, just over 2 minutes left on the clock for this map. ZenAku's the one that's comfortable. He's keeping just stacked enough that he never really has to worry about dying, and he can continue to take a lot of items. Stack has been the magic word here for maxter. He just doesn't really have, throughout any of this map, he's never been able to establish strong control. He's never significantly outstacked ZenAku for an extended amount of time, and a huge part of that comes from, look, the fact that ZenAku just respawns and his stack matches maxter's.
This is starting to look better for maxter, though. Managed to string together a few frags right there. Still needs a lot more, of course, but well within the realm of possibility. Gonna get himself heavy as well. For the first time, we're actually seeing one of these players get a bit of a lead when it comes to damage. So far, they've been basically tied, but maxter now, again, all tied up once more. It's 3,300 damage for each of these players, so no one really dominating when it comes to the damage, and every single time one pulls away, the other is right back on their tail to tie things back up. It's mainly about the items, and it's been ZenAku who's been able to secure most of those. And he'll probably get heavy this time as well. maxter, though, loved the play. He did it towards the beginning. Horizontal rocket jumps, far too few players who make use of that mechanic in my opinion still. Got him onto that item, in and out very quick, but he's got to be careful. He's too soon for Mega, mistiming the item. Ketchup, I think that might just spell GG right there.
Well, even if he does manage to get a frag here, it's what does he do with it? You know, where does ZenAku spawn? Does ZenAku spawn near a weapon that allows him to immediately fight? Because you know that Sorlag's going to spawn with a stack that can rival yours. It's not going to be a matter of, you know, you spawn, I frag, repeat until I make a comeback. The large stack in this kind of situation is, I think, the worst kind of situation you could be in.
And at this point, it is indeed over and done. ZenAku, the man from down under, Australian player, keeping one leg up over his opponent, getting himself the first map win, but it was a hard-fought victory. Yes, he's got a fair few frags to spare, but still, this was not a one-sided game whatsoever. maxter had a few minutes that really went into his favor, got to build some momentum at one point, but ZenAku, using that base stack very expertly, as well as the movement to just stay clear of so much damage, allowed him to keep control of the map.
They had identical damage, actually. I think there was only 90 damage or so that separated them. That's like O'Reilly in difference there. But I think it was maxter started to look a little bit better in the second half, but at the very beginning, you know, ZenAku was the one that just owned the map, right? The whole map really was his. He was hitting a lot of those shots. maxter, his rails in particular weren't particularly clean in the first section, and against a Sorlag and a large champ, those rails, they kind of have to be strong, otherwise you're going to give up all that free real estate for these large champions to just kind of do what they want. And ZenAku, of all players, I mean, he loves the big bodies. There was an early time where it almost felt like he exclusively picked them and almost just them. So if there's one person that you know is going to, above anything else, know how to utilize those large champions, ZenAku's the one you put your money on. But now, Molten Falls, Strogan Pika versus ZenAku's Death Knight. So this is going to be very, very interesting indeed. You've got the extra damage potential of Death Knight thanks to that damage over time that Death Knight received. And on a map like Molten, you know that ZenAku is going to essentially, it's the information game. He's going to be listening out for maxter. You have to try and catch those crouch sliders in a bad situation, but if you can spring a trap now, the damage of Death Knight is much better than it was before.
Yep. I think that one of the big things that we're going to see is probably a bit of a slower game than we just had on Awoken, mainly because ZenAku is going to be hyper-aware, or rather it's maxter. maxter is going to be extremely aware that if he turns one wrong corner, there is a lot of flame damage that could be waiting. So I think he is going to be expecting those traps. He's going to be cautious about his opponent setting up defensively, and as you said, in turn is going to be playing a bit slower, is going to be listening out a lot to try and avoid that. I do think that it's interesting that at the beginning we were talking about, Death Knight, he's going to come back onto the scene, mainly going to be played on the smaller maps. First time we see him, it's on Molten Falls, which is pretty much one of the largest and most open maps in the entire pool. So let's take a look and see how ZenAku is going to play a champion that we really haven't seen on QPL all that often.
I mean, when you think of maps that Death Knight would work on, I do agree that Molten is really not one of them, because there's a lot of open space. Even though it is a map that you can use an opponent's movement against them and spring traps, things like Sorlag work. Why? Because Sorlag, on top of being able to spring those traps, can also move around. You know, it is the speed, it is the mobility and stuff like that. So you kind of have to play that highly defensive look for the one opportunity game with Death Knight, because he doesn't have the same movement as everyone else. That's why he kind of is that just absolute walking turret of damage, and that is all he does. But we'll see if the damage is worthwhile on this kind of map. I don't think this will be a first-time pick for ZenAku. I highly doubt he's experimenting in tournament. I'm sure he's been practicing with it, and that's inspired the pick, and I'm very excited, as Death Knight is very much a personal favorite of mine.
Starting things off on ZenAku's perspective, ZenAku, of course, won map 1, and immediately slowing things down around the corner. The prediction proving to be accurate.
He's not even picking the LG because he won't need it. If he springs a trap, he won't need that LG.
And he doesn't want to make the noise either, knowing that his opponent might be sitting still at heavy or at shotgun.
Exactly.
He's gonna sneak on by. Now he still wants to railgun. That's the last weapon that he needs in his arsenal, whereas his opponent, maxter, still missing the rockets. So both have one type of weapon that they could use to beat their opponent at a specific range. I like how maxter just went for it, picked up the rockets, didn't want to wait all that long. Now ZenAku trying to get onto that item, but he's so clearly knows that maxter is sitting on it, wants to guard that rail with his life.
you're going to have to show a lot of respect to a Death Knight. At least right now. You know, if you don't have a solid lead, because like a Ranger, you know, you can look out for maybe mobility, maybe some repositioning, whatever it might be. But with Death Knight's Flame Strike, you kind of know that it's only ever going to be used in a fight. And a difference might be if you're trying to shut down an item or something, but that's extremely situational. So when you have this fight and you're taking that initial damage that ZenAku's able to do, that was a nice little opportunity to force a disengage. And now even maybe maxter might try and be a little bit aggressive. Does choose to go around the slightly safer way though. Doesn't want to jump all the way down. I mean, we've seen enough ring outs today.
I was just about to say, Ketchup, something feels off. We're almost 2 minutes into Molten Falls, and there haven't been multiple ring outs yet. Something is not right.
These two players are playing too slow.
Oh, good bit of a rocket damage right there. Takes a rail for his trouble. The outcome, the first flames in a while. ZenAku getting punished though. Maxter maintaining that top control. Being able to shoot down and dip in and out of cover quickly. Such an important skill when it comes to Quake. And it does mean that the Argentinian has got the better stack. I like what ZenAku is doing right there. Just projecting. Going up the bounce pad just to get himself a bit further out there so he can at least do something to prevent his opponent from just rushing in as he sets himself up for heavy.
And again, it's that area denial, the damage over time, information if anything, just like a saw lag. And you'll notice that ZenAku was just cycling around the hourglasses. He got his ability back pretty much as soon as he used it, because this section of Molten Falls, there's plenty of hourglasses to pick up. And they will be important for Death Knight. You need to make sure you've always got that Flame Strike. A Death Knight without a Flame Strike is nowhere near as threatening. And this should be a push for maxter. The ZenAku being at death's door, even after that light, only 28 HP. And a 5 seconds. 5 seconds is a bit of a lifetime to wait if you're this weak.
Yeah. He does manage to secure himself at least at 100 points of health. Mega goes his way as well as a small armor. Maxter, probably not entirely aware of how much of an opportunity he had in that situation. Just 3 points of health on ZenAku. Fortunately, unable to really make anything happen. Good rocket, 81 damage. And ZenAku, I don't think he's got timing on heavy at all. He has no clue when the armor is about to spawn. That's a bad rail to take. Maxter, he's got that speed working in his favor, so ZenAku has to be so deliberate and careful with how he tries to avoid his opponent, because he knows he cannot outrun Maxter at all. His opponent flies around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Interesting little strategy.
And there's more of that Flame Strike just to say, get away and create that space. The missed rails, they are going to be a bit frustrating for maxter, I think, because the reality is he's actually playing this matchup incredibly well. He is showing a ton of respect, and more so, he's just preventing ZenAku from being at a close range. Whenever he's going around the corner, you can see the care that maxter's putting into these potential situations where he could get ambushed. And now he knows he can push because the Flame Strike is down. And now he's been able to get control and take that first frag. I really love to see this development. You know, how Quake Championship has been out for about over 3 years at this point, and the top level players, they are playing these champion matchups so much more precisely than they did back when the game first came out.
ZenAku, 20% railgun. Only managed to hit a single rail shot so far. You need to land more, especially on a map like this. Finally, gets himself another shot on. Won't be in time. As Maxter makes good use of that opportunity. That rocket into rail combo gave him the stack advantage he needed to just bully his opponent away. And ZenAku, despite having a sizable stack advantage, leaves the room. Might not have been entirely aware of when Mega was about to spawn, or just didn't feel confident, lacking so many of the major weapons to stick around. But he does get heavy.
It completely changes ZenAku's risk assessment. You know, I think if ZenAku actually had Flame Strike, there's a small chance maybe he would have pushed up that jump pad, because Maxter has no armor. But because he doesn't, you just have to completely reassess any push that you would want to make. Live by it and die by it, I suppose. But I guess you will be doing that if the champion's built on that. I mean, without Flame Strike, what's he got? His Gauntlet's on fire. Great. Yahoo. Alright, here we go. Not enough, Maxter! Does push in. And he gets another frag. ZenAku just hasn't been able to really maximize Death Knight in this map, and I think it's less about ZenAku playing the champion bad or anything like that. I think it's just maxter playing the matchup really well.
Maxter is absolutely making good use out of that peeker. You very often see players just hang on to it far too long, but he is constantly popping it, sometimes just to get a bit of information, usually to try and zone out his opponent or do some sneaky damage. Oh, the flyer is still going to connect. Not for as much as ZenAku would have hoped, but at least knowing where the damage ticks came from will tell him where his opponent went to. As they are now locking horns over the Mega. Maxter, though, realizing he's outpositioned, he doesn't have enough of a stack advantage to just push on through, is going to back away. He's going to give up the Mega health and try and maybe make a move onto the Heavy. Although I do think that maybe in the back of his mind, he's starting to think about playing a passive game until the end. Isn't even gonna go for the Heavy. ZenAku, hyper stacked right now. And I think Maxter just wants to do enough defensive damage and utilize that movement advantage that he has to stay clear from his opponent.
And hitting those defensive angles. The goal here isn't necessarily to score an easy frag, it's just to keep ZenAku sweating. Keep him uncomfortable. Quite weak himself, but thankfully for the Railroom, there's plenty of opportunities to soak up more of those resources. And if he does choose to play that slow and passive game, it is the nature of mobility being the #1 factor. That 100 damage rocket certainly helps. Ooh, the health. The health allows him to stop the bleeding. ZenAku does manage to hit a little bit of that flame strike, and it would have been maybe even death, but ZenAku, unfortunately, there were just too many lights around for Maxter to soak up.
Oh, good rail.
Highly annoying.
Good little rail right there, and that is going to send ZenAku backwards. Another one, he's just applying the pressure. ZenAku, even when securing Mega and Heavy, look at that, barely has a stack advantage to his name. And Maxter is just sitting pretty in this center area of the map, keeping his escape routes open, continuously looking for any opportunity to do some railgun damage, because that's really how he wants to play these final few minutes of this map. Utilize the rail. ZenAku so far still at 25% railgun accuracy. Isn't working out for him, of course. It is lowered since he has to fire at the peeker, but still.
We are still playing that slow game, and this is absolutely that point where Maxter is thinking, right, it's time to completely go for a gear shift. Because right now, we are looking at the fact that Death Knight, as high damage as he is, you know, those kind of weaknesses I think will remain, which is just his lack of mobility. And now if you're against a Strog, and Maxter well aware that if he does want to play this sort of more defensive game and run away, there really isn't anything ZenAku can do to chase it. But it is the nature of, you know, these champions that are built to do one thing. You know, if you are able to play around it, Death Knight certainly isn't alone in that respect. If this was a Galena in the same situation, I think Strog would have an exact same freedom to run around and be defensive. It's just if you don't have mobility to contest with a crouch slider and they have the lead when there's a minute left, they have a clear-cut advantage. And I'd be surprised if Maxter even concedes a single frag here. He's played this so well.
He's gonna get himself one more even.
Bonus.
Going to extend the lead even further, and that will make it a done deal. It's going to be 1-1 after this map. We're moving into the final one, the tiebreaker, the decider of this series. And as you said yourself, this was really all about the rail. Maxter positioning himself so far away, landing good shots, and then just using that mobility, the speed. And the only thing that ZenAku really had an opportunity of doing was just setting up these slow-paced traps, trying to do a lot of burst damage when his opponent wasn't expecting it in the beginning of the game, but he was unable to do so. And then once his opponent finally started running away, getting a few frags, we all knew it was going to be next to impossible for ZenAku to make a comeback.
And I'm just looking at those endgame stats, 5 out of 19 rails hitting for ZenAku. 2 of those rails were the close range one, right where rail spawns early. I think that really goes to show that perhaps ZenAku wasn't even in a position to hit long-range rails a lot of the time, because Maxter was either, he'd just escaped, he'd just gone around the corner, and ZenAku fires a shot just in case, just in case he gets it, and just wasn't able to really hit his mark. So Maxter, on top of being able to patrol around this map and have most of it, was able to hit rails that were never returned because he was always gone. He hits the damage himself, and then he leaves.
Yeah, and I mean, there's really only two things you can do when you're trying to chase down an opponent like that. You either have to catch them by surprise, get them in a close combat situation, and just do the damage because you can't outspeed them, you can't chase them, or the railgun is your go-to tool. You need to land those long-distance shots. It's an instant weapon, it's a hit scan weapon, so the moment you click is the moment the damage registers. Doesn't matter how far away they are, and if you can't pile on the damage by using the railgun, you're just going to be chasing your opponent around forever, and that is exactly what Maxter counted on, and what led him to victory as we are about to load to the next map, setting things up now. Final map catch-up will be Blood Covenant. ZenAku again playing one of your favorites, Athena, going up against Maxter running the Visor, so we've got mobility against information.
It will be the game of momentum, won't it? Because if ZenAku is able to get that really good start, I mean, I don't even need to tell you lovely viewers about Athena on Blood Covenant because we see it all the time. It's one of her absolute strongest maps because she has unrivaled mobility. And It's not about going from, straight up point A to point B. She hasn't got to worry about rocket jumping. She hasn't got to worry about, those points to just get up higher and use this or use that. She can just grappling hook up there while at the same time building up masses of speed to then beat you to an item or something. On top of the fact that she's harder to hit in combat. She's really good in those rocket 1v1s. The list goes on, and Maxter, that visor piercing sight, I mean, I think a lot of it will be used to open up that opening damage. You know what I mean? It's going to at least make those rails a little bit easier if you're playing that slightly long range fight.
Yep. I think it's extremely important this time around for ZenAku that he just keeps that scoreline very close at the beginning of the game, because once again, he is not the mobile champion. Last time, we discussed it a bit before jumping into the game, Death Knight, even though he's gotten a buff, Molten Falls, not exactly the best kind of map. He works better on those small, closed spaces. Now, this time around, he does have that information, the piercing sight rather, to help him identify where his opponent is at, but still, he's going to have to hit those shots, and he does not want to give his opponent a bit of a lead and be able to run away.
So as we're going into this map, we predicted a 2-1 to ZenAku. We're currently 1-1, so this is going to be the kind of decider map, really. We always do play all three maps, but this is to find out who gets the 2-1. And as we begin, those hourglasses, ZenAku able to get the third grappling hook back immediately. And Maxter, piercing sight's been used. ZenAku definitely heard that as well. But that also means that he knows it's gone.
Also have to make note of the importance of the hourglasses. They are such a powerful tool on the map that allow you to very significantly reduce that cooldown on your ability. And there is no champion better than Athena at denying those hourglasses, because she can just constantly use that hook with no real penalty whatsoever, and in doing so is able to deny pretty much every single hourglass on the map. So Maxter is going to be without his piercing sight. A whole lot of ZenAku plays his cards right.
Like purposefully using the grappling hook to take those hourglasses, it's clearly used to, you're going to get it back immediately, and now it means Visor can't use it. And the less information Visor has on you when you are as mobile as ZenAku's Athena will be, the better. Now, setting up for the rail. Lovely shot from Maxter. The fact that he used it right round the corner does kind of give away that it was a piercing sight shot without even having to go to Maxter's POV. So ZenAku likely knows that. Not that it will help him here with those rockets raining down, but the immediate grappling hook making that rocket pepper just not as scary as it would be for other champions. It really does go to show how powerful Athena can be. A lot of situations that champions would otherwise struggle. She just doesn't have the same weakness. That was a lovely rail from ZenAku, and now actually only needs one more. Swapping to the machine gun to try and be a little bit better on the consistent damage, but Maxter does escape with his life.
And of course, let us not forget, this is probably the prime map for Athena. Maxter, why are you there? You know you're outstacked. You know your opponent can get there in 5 seconds or so. So he really should not have put himself in that situation. Instead of seeded the heavy instead, maybe try to do a bit of damage, stay clear, get his stack back up, but just jumping onto it, knowing that your opponent just picked up Mega and has got that extreme mobility, that's just not going to work. Aggressive push on the Mega, manages to do a tremendous amount of damage still. This could be an opener for Maxter. This time, better idea to go for heavy, even though he's lacking weaponry. But he should still be able to steal the item and get away clean.
Problem that maxter has now is, piercing sight's going to be gone. Looking towards getting some of those important weapons. Still doesn't have a rail, which is a real trouble for him. He had information going up towards heavy on piercing sight, but the lack of rail made it way harder for him to actually get any damage out. And as now, ZenAku right nearby. Opening rail for maxter's good. As he pushes down, another potential fight happening. maxter does have a rail, but that is better than nothing. Oh. And the piercing sight to try and make it easier. At the very least, he knows where ZenAku's retreating.
maxter had an opportunity right there. ZenAku fumbled the movement. He had an angle with the railgun, missed it. That would have been a kill. But ZenAku getting that vertical supremacy, holding the high ground. He knows that his opponent is still down there. Fires the rocket a moment too late. That could have been 100 to the face, no doubt. As he retreats onto heavy, and now ZenAku showing exactly why Athena is such a tremendously strong pick on this map. She is incredibly fast, horizontally, vertically, and she will eat every single hourglass before you can even look at it.
And maxter has used the piercing sight. He at least got the information on where heavy was taken, but it's not really enough to help him out, because now ZenAku gets a frag just at the right time as Mega spawns. And as he was the one that took the last heavy, he's going to have perfect timing on this as well. And this full cycle of control, it begins. There's a delay between both. ZenAku knows how both of them appear. Feels like this map has been a lot longer. This is only 4 minutes in. For some reason, it feels like it's already almost gone the 10 minutes with how back and forth you would think it is. But ZenAku still keeping this 3-0. maxter, he's getting some damage, but it's just never enough to put himself in a position to finish the job. ZenAku, he's just out. He takes damage and he escapes, and maxter cannot chase.
And everything, literally everything is going in ZenAku's favor right now. He's got many more item pickups. maxter only has managed to pick up 4 major items so far, and then he's also significantly outdamaging his opponents in this final map. So maxter doesn't have much going for him. He's going to get bounced into the bounce pad, and actually ZenAku unable to capitalize off of it. He really had a bit of an opportunity right there.
maxter! Oh, that's tragic. That's tragic. You wouldn't have seen it on stream, but I was checking out maxter's POV. Right as ZenAku was weak, maxter popped his piercing sight for the chase, had the perfect lined up rail then and missed it. Thankfully, he was able to pick that one up, because that would have been a very heartbreaking way to not get a frag.
He missed the second one too. When ZenAku was just standing on heavy waiting for it to spawn, he still had a kill shot lined up, but couldn't quite pull through. Now maxter, for the first time in minutes, has got control of the map. He's got a better stack, but he just used the piercing sight and ZenAku heard it. Knows exactly that it's been used. He's gonna sit tight, hold out for a few seconds, wait for that to calm down and finish. Now he's gonna move back into the map. Nice little rail. Good use of the ability there too. He knows that he's squishy. He's a light champion. One rail can absolutely cripple you if you don't have any resources to fall back on. So instead of risking it, he just uses the ability to zoop on by through the doorway. And maxter unable to land the shot.
Not a lot of rails left for maxter. This rail's the last one, and now he's out. Heavy goes into his favor as he goes towards Mega now. Enough of a divide that maybe he can beat him to it. The rocket's good, and ZenAku gets caught trying to use the hook. maxter's rocket placement was just far too delicious right there. And he knows ZenAku's only got a rail. What's he going to use? Nothing. Even if he hit that rail, he was dead.
maxter finally starting to ramp up the damage. Working out very nicely for him. Because ZenAku is unable to play the game that he wants to play. He's caught out just sitting on items several times in a row. That's how he's lost 2 frags already. First on heavy, then on mega. And that is just not how you want to be forced to play Athena. You want to always be dictating the pace and the speed of the game. And be able to pick up any item at your own leisure while you apply pressure to your opponent. But that is not what's happening at all. Because maxter is finally starting to dish out a lot of the damage.
A little bit of tri-bolt. 11 damage from that tri-bolt. And the heavy saves his skin and keeps him confident as now he's been able to not only stabilize, but he's also in a phenomenal chance. ZenAku gets caught. The grappling hook almost seemed like the LG. Right as he hit the wall, just pushed down, and there was no way he could recover. maxter catching him at absolutely the worst possible time. ZenAku's not going to feel good about that one.
This feels like it's starting to slip away from ZenAku. Ketchup. He's got to stabilize. He still has plenty of time to work with. 2 minutes for 1 frags shouldn't be a problem at all. But he can't keep falling into maxter's arms like this. He's absolutely playing the game that the Argentinian is wanting him to play. Making a move onto Mega way too early. Showing his phase even. Now he's gonna go straight up. This should be another frag, and indeed! ZenAku, too aggressive right now on these pushes. Shouldn't be there.
Even down to that, seeing maxter straight ahead, I'm pretty sure he saw him, and then still going towards the nail, taking a bunch of tri-bolt damage fresh off spawn. I'm a little bit worried about ZenAku going into the final moments of this map. He does have time. If he gets a frag right now, there's going to be a good opportunity. The danger is that in 10 seconds, that piercing sight is coming back, and as long as these rails hit before it's even returned, now here it is. Is this going to be a free rail? Oh, he's looking for it. But ZenAku was already safely out of there. The lead belongs to maxter, as you can clearly see, he's going in the less obvious places. He's starting to play that retreating game. He's not looking to cement himself on a lot of these items. Heavy does belong to him. And as ZenAku misses these rails, does manage to hit one, but that's not going to be enough to stop maxter.
ZenAku giving him the heavy right there might just have sealed the deal. Can't believe he wasn't there to at least try and pressure it. Maybe he was just not expecting ZenAku to even go for it, or maxter to go for it, but here we go. Rocket jump is going to work out. A little bit more damage. LG should be able to clear it up. He actually doesn't connect once. Oh, the rocket! Oh, I thought that was going to be a frag for sure, but just barely.
I think we all did.
Barely survives. That was a beautiful fade away from maxter right there. And now ZenAku is in such a bad spot. He almost doesn't even have the time.
One exchange might have won the map for him, because now maxter is healthy again. Oh, that direct was juicy. Misses the rail, but ZenAku misses his as well. Out of rockets. He's got nothing, but it doesn't matter. A very, very crusty final fight. But you know what? It doesn't matter. It's going to be maxter holding out until the last moment, stealing the lead. And that was all she wrote. 2-1 for maxter. GG's coming out.
My goodness, another close finish. I think that ZenAku still had a decent opportunity to make a comeback happen, but as you mentioned, right, 2 misplays. First, not showing up on heavy, punishing his opponent not even remotely in that situation where he should have at least been doing a good amount of damage, landing a rail and stealing the item for his own. Doesn't manage to do any of that, and then he completely fumbles that fight up on the bounce pad, dropping down. The LG whiffs completely. And then he just takes such damage that maxter is able to safely retreat and play things out. GG's, well played. Black Hawks Clan is going to be pleased with this performance, as maxter will be taking this one home 2-1.
I think a lot of people were looking forward to this one because, we don't have a lot of prior information, and both of these players, they're a little bit different, I suppose, and they've got their own little fan bases. And I definitely know there would have been I guess the 2 audiences going head to head in chat, perhaps, and it's just territories too. There's a lot of like regional pride with a lot of these players, and overall, I think they gave us a really nice clash.
Yep. Few misplays from ZenAku though, if we're looking back at the highlights. Situations where he really should not have been there, like that push for the Mega. The strategy just wasn't quite there anymore. maxter was starting to hit it, land so many of his shots. ZenAku forced more into the defensive, couldn't play the game he started out playing with that very snippy and fast Athena, and then maxter just used that stack advantage and just ran away with it. Beautiful.
So, that does mean that maxter and ZenAku comes to a close, but that was just a taste of the day's action. You can take a look at his, weapon accuracy, 100% on the super shotgun. 1 pellet must have hit per shot, I guess. you know how it is. But with that being the end of our second series, up next it'll be Dewey versus Dahang. Any opening notes before we go to a break?
This should be another exciting game. Dewey versus Dahang. Dahang widely considered to be the second best player, at least on the NA side of things, whereas Dewey has actually managed to beat or take down Dahang a few times in the past, so this should be a closer matchup than I think some people might be expecting.
Right, well, on that note, I do believe we're going to cut to a break and set up the next series. Thank you so much for joining us here for Quake Pro League Week 4 of Season 2. We will be right back.